Guys, so my name's Kathy Kellogg and I work on the intake team here with Support Inc. and I'm also partially responsible for our marketing needs. Today, we're going to be talking about host home provider services. What does that look like? What does it mean to be a host home provider? And what supports do we give to the people that help us serve our clients? So on here today, we have Brian Sluzar, who is our marketing manager. And we also have Jeff Whitney, which is one of our best providers. And we're very, very happy to have you both on here with us today. Just wanted to give you guys a brief rundown of the residential services we provide. So our PowerPoint, we'll start with that information, and then we'll go further into what it means to be a host home provider. This presentation should last about half an hour or so, and then we're going to open up the last 30 minutes to questions and discussions. So I'm going to go ahead and share this PowerPoint with you guys. And then I will kick it over to Brian to get started with the presentation. Can you guys see that okay?
Not yet.
I'm unable to see you. Can you see it?
No.
No. Okay. Hold on just one second. I have been struggling with Zoom this week, so I do apologize.
Don't worry, there's only 29 of us waiting for you.
Yeah, no pressure. Okay, does that work?
Yes,
okay, perfect. And then here we go. Thanks. All right.
All right. You want me to take it over, Kathy?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Yeah, as Kathy said, my name's Brian. I'm our Associate Director of Marketing here at Support Inc. Here to talk a little bit today about what it is to be a host home provider. Background in case management, and I also worked as Associate Director of Operations for Support Inc. for 3 years. So worked really closely with a lot of our host home providers. First thing we're going to talk about is just kind of an overview of DD waiver services. The DD waiver is a long-term care Medicaid waiver in the state of Colorado. There's a variety of those, from supported living services waiver to elderly, blind, disabled waiver. We're going to talk about the DD waiver because that's what Support Inc. works with, and that's where the host home setting really lies. So the DD waiver, also known as the comprehensive waiver, the main benefit of that is housing is guaranteed. So the individual with developmental disabilities, their housing is guaranteed when they're on the DD waiver. It's a really important benefit. Our agency is responsible for finding an individual housing no matter what. Residential settings that exist within the DD waiver are the host home, the family caregiver, and the personal care alternative. Family caregiver is simply they live with a family member. Personal care alternative can vary, but the most popular one is the individual lives on their own in an apartment. And then the host home setting is the individual lives with a contracted host home provider. Another important acronym is the CCB, which is the Community Centered Board. They're spread out throughout the state, usually connected to the counties. And the CCB would provide a case manager, and they're responsible for coordinating and facilitating services. A PASA is a program approved service agency. That's us, Support Inc., and they are just service providers. So they're kind of contracted to provide services to individuals on the DD waiver. Other services that exist on the DD waiver are day program or day services, which is simply the individual can kind of get out, socialize, do fun things in the community or on site somewhere, maybe going bowling with a bunch of peers. Also behavioral clinical services offered in the waiver. That's simply a trained clinician who can provide clinical services, individual or group counseling to the individual. They can also provide consultation services to the provider, do assessments, things like that. Medical supplies are also guaranteed in the waiver, things like wipes, depends, hearing aids. And then also SSI, SSDI, which is Social Security income. Each individual on the DD waiver gets a monthly income from Social Security. So just kind of an overview of what DD waiver services are. Next, we'll define a host home provider. So what is a host home provider? It's an independent contracted caregiver who's paid a daily rate to provide care to an individual on the DD waiver. So you're paid a daily rate based on the individual support level. Each individual gets a support level based on their needs. The scoring goes from 1 to 6. 6 would be someone who has high needs. 1 would be someone who has low needs. And the host home provider is paid a contracted daily rate based on that support level funding. The individual in the services would live in your home. So the host home provider doesn't have to go anywhere. The individual lives in your home. That obviously provides a lot of work flexibility. The individual's living in your home, so you can base your schedule, your family schedule, all off the individual schedule. So it provides a lot of flexibility. Daily, weekly, and as needed tasks. Daily can really range depending on the individual support level and needs. So those daily tasks could involve providing bathing, toileting, dressing, meals, things like that. The individual could be also very high functioning, so you may only just do reminders for them to brush their teeth, help them with living skills, job skills, things like that. So daily will really depend on the individual living in your home. As stated below, specific job duties will vary. Something that you have to do daily is medication administration tracking. So when you administer meds to the individual, you have to track that in a state system on a daily basis. Weekly, again, those weekly tasks will vary depending on the individual. You may take them to see their family, do things like that. You also have to do a residential log in the state system to kind of justify the residential services being provided. Then some of the as needed tasks are taking them to medical appointments, taking them to see family, taking them to do fun things out in the community, whatever the individual and your family likes to do. So again, those job tasks will really vary depending on the individual. It's important to find an individual that kind of fits in your home. So being a host home provider comes with challenges and rewards. It can be a difficult job, but it's very rewarding. Some of the challenges that exist are medical and behavioral situations. So some individuals have high medical needs, medical emergencies occur. We utilize 911. These are all community-based services. But just a host home provider needs to be prepared for some medical situations that can occur. And also behavioral situations. Again, not every individual is different. Some individuals can present with outbursts, yelling, maybe throwing things. So Support Inc. would provide that upfront training and ongoing training. We have nurses on staff to kind of assist with all those medical trainings, CPR, first aid. And then we also have a great clinical team that can help with behavioral situations, crisis management, safety care, things like that. But those could be the challenges of being a host home provider. Also, the 24/7 health and safety monitoring. It's not a 24/7 job, but it's just important to know that you're kind of on the clock 24/7. Individuals go to day program, they go to work, they go see family. So you have a lot of time off, but it's just important to know that if something comes up at night, 2 in the morning, the host home provider is kind of responsible for that individual and assisting them. So it's really kind of a monitoring and assisting 24/7. And then I would say another challenge is paperwork compliance. On top of providing care to the individual, there also comes with that paperwork that I previously described, kind of documenting the medication administration on a daily basis, the weekly logs, things like that. So that could always be a challenge, having to kind of balance the paperwork compliance plus the care of the individual. Some rewards that come with being a host home provider, you get to work from home, which is a huge benefit. Like previously mentioned, you got a really flexible schedule. You can really base your work life off your personal life, creates a lot of flexibility. Tax exempt pay is also another huge benefit. It's paid through the foster care IRS guidelines. So a host home provider does not have to pay any taxes on the pay they receive. And then it just comes with a ton of intrinsic and moral value. It's not only just a critical responsibility and important to the individual, but also just to our society. Providing individuals with developmental disabilities a safe, happy place to live just comes with a ton of intrinsic and moral values. And right on the right there is a great example of that. One of our best host home providers, Shanti, who I also saw on here, and then HD is the initials of the individual who lives in her home. Couldn't be a better fit. I think she's been there 3 years now. And I think Shanti would tell you it's not even a job to her. HD is just kind of part of their family. They go on vacations together. They do arts and crafts together. So when you find that right match, it's really just great all around. HD loves living there. She considers Sean and Brent her family. So it really just comes with a ton of intrinsic and moral values, which we all kind of feel in this field. And with that, I'd also like to turn it over to Jeff, who we have on here to kind of talk about his experiences being a host and provider with us.
Hi, everybody. So I've been a host home provider for one of my people since 2017. And then I actually have a second person that's come to stay with me that I take care of. And I've had her, it was 2 years in September. So for me, it is awesome to be at home. It really is. And to try to make a difference in somebody else's life is so rewarding. And, you know, everybody is always saying, oh, you know, I can't believe what you do for them. I can't believe how much you care for them. And I can't believe, you know, what you sacrifice for them. And I think what people really don't always understand is I get probably more from them than they will ever get from me. Sorry. Geez, where'd that come from? I honestly love them as if they were my own. Both of them. And one of them, we're really going through a tough time right now with some very bad medical diagnosis. So, you know, things are a little touch and go, but it is really important to look at this as how can I improve someone's life? And generally, a lot of the people that we get are people that have kind of had it rough, you know, from the beginning. And, you know, it's really nice when you can bring somebody into your home and you can help them succeed. You can help them make improvements in their lives. My first individual, when I got her, she would constantly hit herself. She always had knuckles that were scabbed over or infected or bleeding. Her chin was always open and sores everywhere and just really struggling. And I can say that she has not hit herself in probably 2 years. You know, she's really fit in well. She feels safe. She feels cared for. And besides the whole benefit of the money thing, which is great, you know, the tax-free and all that, it's all great. It's all fine, whatever. But I really feel like the reward comes from taking care of the people that you serve. And it's not easy. There are definitely times that it's extremely stressful. But there's many times where it's just as exciting and rewarding, and you know, your people feeling loved and feeling the love that comes back from them is really quite amazing. It's something that really just makes you feel almost complete as a person when you can make a difference in somebody else's life. And you know, and I think that's the way you need to look at it. I think you need to make sure that you always put their needs ahead of everything else, and you know, giving them the life that they really deserve and that they have not had is so critical and so important to, you know, society. As Brian said, you know, taking care of people is our responsibility, and we just need to continue to do that. And you know, wrap your arms around these people that we serve, and you know, take as best care of them as we can. Follow all the rules that you're given. The compliance things are so critical. There's so many compliance things that, you know, it is your responsibility to get those things done in a timely fashion, keep up with them. It's a responsibility that you can't take lightly. And I think that as long as you do all of those things and you really care for the people that you serve, it's very rewarding for everybody.
Mhm. Yes, thank you so much for sharing your experience, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I didn't.
Sorry, I had a little meltdown there for a second, but when you get this attached to them, it's hard not to, you know?
I was gonna say, I didn't even need to be here, Jeff. That was phenomenal.
Thank you.
No one can say it better than that. So thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly what we look for in a match. Just making sure it's a good fit for both sides, really wanting to have host home providers just like Jeff that are caring and compassionate and put that person's needs before their own. That's quintessential good care. So just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing that. And having known you now for almost 6 years, I can vouch firsthand that you give some of the best care that we've ever seen to your two individuals. And we very much appreciate you doing that. And just like you said, it is hard sometimes. And one of them kind of going through some medical stuff right now, which is heartbreaking. But in the end, it's all worth it to know that you gave good care to that person.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and get back to our PowerPoint now. I had to take a break because I wanted people to see you talking. All right. Okay, so we left off at challenges and rewards. So now we're going to pick back up with the job requirements. So from an intake standpoint, I work with Cindy and Kristen, and part of our jobs on the intake team is to help onboard host home providers as quickly as possible to get our families the services that they need. The most important thing that we always want to start with is the background checks and the reference checks. And so just making sure that we're vetting good people, making sure everything comes back clean on that front. And then when COVID had happened for the last couple of years, what we had been doing was doing the host home inspections online and then doing them in person when we get to a match. And so that is a process that we really enjoyed back in 2020, and we continue to do that. So we do an informal home inspection with every host home provider online first, just to get to know that person, kind of do a casual interview, make sure the home looks good. And then when that person is closer to securing a match, then we actually go out there in person and just do it one more time at the actual home. QMAP, as you guys probably know, is a huge piece of making sure the host home is qualified to provide that good care that we're looking for. So once you take QMAP once with the state, you're certified for life, but we do ask that all providers and employees recert internally with us every 3 years, just to make sure it's still fresh in your mind. We also have our providers sign up for first aid CPR as well. And then we also have our basic IDD orientation. The online training piece is called Relias, and that is to be taken by everyone annually. I believe it's about 15-20 hours of online training that's taken once a year. And then safety care is something that we recommend for individuals that might have behavioral symptoms, mental health issues, things like that. If you're going to have someone placed in your home that has some mental health needs or behavioral issues, we might suggest that provider take safety care, which is basically going to be preventing behaviors, de-escalation techniques, things like that. And then last but not least, we always want to make sure our ducks are in a row with paperwork. So the driver's license, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, renter's insurance, professional liability, and also having a trade name as well. So what does the relationship with Support Inc. look like? From an intake standpoint, we want to help you get a placement as quickly as possible. We constantly look at referrals every day, multiple times throughout the day. And we do ask that the host home providers that apply with us check in with us once a month so that we keep you fresh in our minds. When you do have a match that takes place, we want to be there to support you along the way before we hand you off to your residential team. So we want to make sure we're answering any questions you might have. We're setting up meet and greets for you. We're trying to help you get the medical information you need on that person. We're double and triple checking. What do behaviors look like? What sort of mental health symptoms does this person have? Just doing anything and everything we can to help support you. I think a big piece of this is we jokingly call ourselves matchmakers, but it doesn't need to be just a good match for the client. We also want to make sure that it's a good match for the host home provider as well. So some host home providers might have kids and pets and things like that, or it might just be a single provider. So whatever that match might look like, we just want to make sure it's a good match for both parties. One thing that I really like about our agency is how team oriented we are. So when you do have a person move into your home, you're going to be assigned a coordinator, and they come out to the house and check on you once a month. If there's any questions or concerns that coordinator can't answer, that gets kicked up to your associate director. We have strong nursing supports, 2 registered nurses, medical coordinators. We also have a benefits specialist. So if there's any questions with SSI, SSDI, we can always kick those to Lily as well. In addition, we offer our clinical and behavioral services, like Brian had mentioned, in-house. And so if you really want increased communication, we suggest that you keep all those things internally with us, just because it's easier to communicate in a more efficient manner. And then just having a family feel to it. So we really do try to check in with our host home providers often, making sure that you guys get the supports that you need, and really just trying to take a preventative approach to issues before they become a major problem. Right here, we have our host home flyer. I know we have several host home providers on here today, and so you guys know that Kristen and I have worked directly with you on these before. So what we like to do is create a flyer for you by collecting some additional details on your family and your home situation, throw that together in a flyer, then we can send that off to case management for you when we're looking at referrals that we think could be a good match. So at the top, you're going to have the name and the address of that person. What are the major cross streets of the home? What type of home is it? Is it a condo? Is it a single family home? Things like that. Where is the location of the bedroom and bathroom? That's really important for us when we're trying to help you find a match. If someone needs a home with wheelchair accessibility and the bedroom's on the 2nd floor, it's probably not going to be a good fit. By contrary, maybe you have someone that's highly independent and goes to work every day and kind of wants like that mother-in-law suite. And so a basement apartment might be better for that person. We want to know who's in the home, since some individuals prefer kids and some would prefer not to live with kids. Some people like pets and some don't. We also want to focus on what sort of family activities you guys engage in. What type of meals do you like to cook and eat? Languages that might be spoken fluently, smokers in the home, religious affiliation. And then last but not least, we have our host home providers give us a paragraph or 2 of their experience. Because some families that we work with are looking for very specific criteria. So maybe a family has a loved one with very high medical needs, and what they are looking for is a registered nurse because that person uses a G-tube. We would love to have that information listed on your flyer, just so we can make an even better match when we're going through our referrals. So how to become a host home provider? If you're interested in doing so, feel free to jot down this website. It's supportingjobs.applytojob.com/apply. We always accept the applications through our website. I will say that we often get referrals for host home providers by word of mouth, which is also great. Greatly appreciate that. The next step would be to have a virtual meeting with us after you complete your application. Then we want to work on your marketing flyer as the next step after that. Doing a home tour with us virtually is important as well. And then once we complete some of those steps, we add you to our host home database, and then you await placement. We always like to gently remind people to please be patient with us. If you are currently a host home provider and you're waiting on placement, it can take some time to find a good match. And so we're constantly looking at referrals all along the Front Range, all the way up to Wellington, past Fort Collins, down to Colorado Springs, and then all the way out on the Eastern Plains. And sometimes it does take a good amount of time to find someone that is A, in your area, B, could be a good match, C, want to make sure that the house is a good fit for that person as well. So that's just a brief overview of what the process looks like to become a host home provider. And then if you guys have any questions after this meeting, feel free to take down our email. So that's going to be intake@supporting.com. There's 3 of us that check this box multiple times throughout the day. So if you have any questions afterwards that you're not comfortable asking on here, then you're welcome to reach out after the webinar. I believe that that concludes our presentation. And so we just wanted to open it up if anybody has any questions, concerns. We have Jeff on here, myself, Brian, the intake team. So if you guys have any questions, just feel free to let us know.
We've had host home providers that have been with supporting since almost day one. Not only the first family being host home providers, but the children of those providers as they've grown up. It's amazing to see how families continue on providing care. So great presentation, Kathy and Brian. And if you know of any host home providers in Colorado Springs, Pueblo, the eastern area, those are really the main areas we're looking for. We're also looking for Jefferson County host home providers. So just wanted to throw that out. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I always say that some of our best providers came from word of mouth. So. I know that there's some host home providers on here and family caregivers. So if anybody has any questions, any parents, any current providers.
I have a question. What did you mean by trade name?
Training for host home providers.
There was something on one of the first slides that said trade name.
Oh,
You want me to take that one?
What's that?
That's a really good question. When we mentioned it, I was wondering if people would have questions. It's essentially, so host home providers are independent contractors. So they're not employees. So they're considered contractors. So they have to set up a trade name with the state. And it's essentially just setting up that you're kind of an independent contractor. The trade name can be kind of whatever you want. Jeff has a trade name. It's just how you can get paid as an independent contractor. We would give you a link. It's through, I believe, the Department of Secretary of State. It's pretty easy to kind of set up, doesn't cost much money. It just kind of distinguishes that it's kind of your own business. You're an independent contractor.
So then you would have to have your own like insurance and stuff like that. Like as
Yes. Yes, most people already have like auto insurance, home insurance, but that's what was also mentioned, professional liability insurance. So that's like the extra step, a trade name, and then professional liability insurance would be kind of your own insurance. Good questions.
If you're a family caregiver, Brian, do you have to do that as well if you want to be a contractor?
So it depends on what your status is. So some of our family caregivers are employees. You don't need any of that because you're an employee. If you're set up as a contractor, like a host home providers are set up as independent contractors. So that's why they need those kind of trade names, professional liability insurance. But if you're a family caregiver employee, you don't need any of that. So it's really just depends on the employment status. If you're an independent contractor, you need that trade name and professional liability insurance. If you're considered an employee, you don't need that. Does that make sense and answer the question?
Yeah, so if I didn't want to be an employee as a family caregiver, I could become a contractor, but then I would have to have the trade name and the,
Yes.
even
Yep.
though it's my own
Correct.
child.
Yes. And then there's kind of different, we have a document too, if you're interested, if you wanted to reach out to that intake at Support Inc. We have a document that kind of explains the differences and benefits to being a contractor and an employee. Different situations kind of work for different people. Regarding host home providers, they can't be employees. So host home providers have to be independent contractors.
Now,
Questions?
the intake team would be happy to send you the information, Elaine. Thank you. Good questions.
If I can just touch on what they're talking about too, it's really, it's not complicated to get it set up, and it's also very relatively inexpensive. But what it does, they will give you all the information as far as how to get your insurance set up and whatnot, and then they will always send you emails to renew every year. Sorry, my dog is growling. Bruce. Oh, Bruce. It really is. It's very beneficial, but you also, when you get paid, you don't get paid in your trade name. So just so that's not a confusing thing too, because initially I thought I would have to have a different banking and everything like that with the trade name, and you don't have to have that. So just throwing that out there as well.
Would you have to file taxes?
No, you do not have to file taxes, because there's no employment taxes or anything like that taken out of.
Yeah, if you have any questions on that, I'll put our email in the chat so everybody has it, and we can send you guys more information on the tax piece. And just know that we technically cannot give tax advice, but we do have documents that we can show you that just kind of briefly outline the differences between host home provider contractor versus like family caregiver contractor and things like that. Good questions.
And then there's also things we can kind of write up for like houses and purchasing cars. That kind of shows what income you receive since you don't pay taxes. And like Kathy said, we kind of have forms and documents for all that stuff.
And you're going to send this out to us, or we can go somewhere and get this information?
So I put our email in the chat. If you want to reach out, then we'll be more than happy to send you the tax information.
Awesome, thank you.
Could you talk about how the host homes coordinate with family for time off, for example, or just, their involvement, I guess?
Yes, so we do offer respite to our host home providers, and that can look different for each person depending on their situation. So we do have a lot of host home providers that have family members that are also contracted with us to provide that care. And so sometimes they'll make that connection with the person that they know, make sure the parents of that loved one are aware, hey, we're taking a week off and going to Florida. Maybe that individual in services doesn't want to go to Florida. And so they're going to go stay with my brother, and I'm going to pay that person to provide the care. So that could be one situation for respite. Another scenario might be that we have a host home provider that's contracted with us, but maybe they don't have any connections for respite. And so in those situations, we ask them to reach out to their residential team as far ahead of time as possible. I always like to say at least a month out would be ideal. And then your residential team will help you find respite internally with all the host home providers that we have onboarded with us.
That's really well said. And I think it's just kind of case by case. But the family is just kind of part of that team. And host home providers, have dinner with families, and the individual will go with family. So it's really kind of just everyone working together. And like Kathy said, those providers will get time off, things like that. But we always love to see when kind of families, host home providers work hand in hand, or kind of just becomes a bigger family. I think Shanti is an example of that. Her individual's family, they come over there, she goes back to her mom's house. And it's kind of just one big family.
Yeah, and some families prefer that person come home to them while the host home providers take time off as well. So each situation's different, and we're totally flexible. Whatever that looks like to get them respite, we'll work really hard to make sure that it happens.
There's new coming out of the And one thing too is I would like to just say to you, Beth, too, if you're wondering, HD and I, we just mesh extremely well together. We're like two peas in a pod, and I hardly ever need respite. So they supporting is asking me to take times to make sure that I, have your alone time, or your go do things without your person. So they were trying to help me find respite too. And I didn't necessarily need, because the family actually is very involved. There are some that where the family isn't involved, but there's other aspects and there's other options out there, and they're extremely supportive in trying to help you find respite, which is phenomenal. Oh, even if emergencies arise, if an emergency arises, like I contact my residential coordinator, and Johnny on the spot, very, very, very helpful, extremely supportive. I can't say anything more than how amazing of an experience I've been having the last 2 years, 2.5 years, actually.
Thank you for that insight.
What happens if your person is in the hospital, for example?
Do you mind if I jump in on this one? So if the individual's in the hospital, then more oftentimes than not, either the family is there with them or the host home provider. The situation is, though, that if Medicaid's paying for the individual to be in the hospital, then we're not getting paid to pay the host home provider. So this is all really good information that the intake team talks about as we're getting to know the individual and getting the provider going, is have they been in the hospital a lot? Have they, needed to be there for a month at a time, and kind of make sure that the host home provider understands that that could happen. Supporting tries to help, though, because, everybody's got a little different situation. So we take every case separately, but for the most part, I've seen families and I've seen providers stay day and night with the individual in the hospital just to make sure they're getting what they need. And that's all basically for free. Not to scare you.
But you're not required, right?
Right.
I mean, if you have a job, then by all means, check on them by phone and then go to your job or something.
Yes, that's accurate, especially like if they're in the waiting room, you'd have to stay. But if they've kind of been admitted, it's really like Cindy was saying, like Medicaid, those nurses, the hospital staff is required to provide that care. So yeah, we have some that will leave. You're not required to stay there all night. But yeah, it just depends on the provider. Some do, some don't, but it's a good clarification. If they've been admitted, then that hospital staff is required to provide that care.
Yes, and you can specifically ask for one-to-one care while they're in the hospital. If you have a developmentally delayed individual, or if they're nonverbal, or if there's whatever reasons, you would feel better that they had a one-to-one person that would stay in the room with them at all times. They actually do provide that care.
That's good to know.
Great information. Thank you, Jeff.
Questions too. Was there any other questions that anybody has on here?
I have another question. How does the transition between either between one host home and the next, or between the family and the host home go? Like, are there visitations and stuff, or
Mhm.
how does that?
So really,
Yeah.
again, that's going to be case by case, dependent on the person. How fast does that family want to move? Do they want to take their time? We've seen some cases where the family might have like a crisis going on. Maybe the mom or the dad is in poor health, and so they need to get things moving really fast. And so we want to move on their time frame. I had a case earlier this year. I think it took about 4 months to move from one house to the next, because that's how slow they wanted to do that. And we respect the time frame every time. So when it comes from moving from the family's house to the host home provider's house, we just want a real clear sense of what sort of time frame that family's working with. And then we want to do meet and greets, whether we start with Zoom or in person, that's up to the family. Ideally, if we can schedule an overnight 1 or 2 times just to make sure it's a good fit, we like to do that as well. And then have that person move in whenever they feel comfortable doing so. So
That's so like the timeline is really, like Kathy said, all dependent on the individual, family, the provider. And then just another caveat is Support Inc. as the agency will pay for the moving company. We would kind of cover all of that. So we have a moving company that we work with. We kind of contact them, tell them the dates, and they kind of move everything. So the family, the individual, the host and provider doesn't have to worry about moving things. We would assist with all of that.
the residential team is more so involved, like from a host home move to a host home move. Brian, did you want to just maybe talk about that a little bit, since intake doesn't really do that too often?
I was thinking the other Brian. You're asking me, right? And like
Yeah.
it's really like Kathy said, case by case. And yeah, but like Shanti said, your host home providers are assigned a residential coordinator and then also associate director. So 2 residential people on the team. And yeah, just that residential team is ready to jump in whenever. We also have a 24/7 on-call phone in case something happens on the weekend. Generally a lot more difficult to make things like an emergency move happen on the weekend. But like Shanti said, if an emergency comes up, that residential coordinator and associate director are there to kind of get that individual either to a family's house, another qualified contractor's home. And again, they would assist with everything. I used to be associate director of operations, so I've had to pick people up, pick their belongings up and drive them. Sometimes it's not possible to get a moving company day of. So that residential team is really there to kind of jump in and assist with whatever the need is for the family, the provider, or the individual. That answer your question?
Yeah, in your experience, like how long is a person normally placed in a home for? Like
I
what,
think
what's typical, I guess?
I guess it's hard to answer. We've had individuals in homes for 10, 20 years. That's like our goal, is for them to be there forever. I think Shanti would say that. I don't think HD or Shanti ever wants that to change. Some individuals are tougher than others. Some have medical complications. You know, they get a G-tube and that provider's not able to provide that care, so they have to move. It really varies depending on the needs. Some host and providers move. We've had that host and provider, they're moving to Texas. So it really all depends, but our goal is to have that placement last for as long as the provider and individual wants it to. And yes, it's hard to place a number on it exactly because it's really just case by case. But I think the ultimate goal is to make that match last for as long as we can. Cindy, would you seem like you wanted to jump in?
Well, I'm just agreeing with you. Our goal, because it takes a lot of energy and time to make a good match and make sure everything's going well. Our goal is to make it last as long as we possibly can. Trying to have critical conversations with our host home providers about what are you going to do 10 years down the road? You know, is there any chance you're going to move, or will anything change? Just trying to plan ahead and make sure we're all on the right, the same place. And, you know, a lot of what Kristen, Kathy, and I do is weed out the individuals that really just need to be a provider for a few months until they get back into whatever kind of job they want to do. That's not what we're looking for. We're only looking for the folks that can commit and are dedicated. And then our job is to make the best match so that it doesn't completely disrupt your current lifestyle, that we have energetic folks in energetic host homes, calmer host homes. We have calmer folks. I mean, we really try to match what you have and what you need. So longer the better. Thank you, Beth.
Can I touch on that one as well, please? Because when you are enlisting, if that's the right word, to become a host home provider, you are very encouraged to speak up for yourself also, for like what you are looking for, what behaviors you're able to work with, and what behaviors you're absolutely not willing to work with as well. So you can set boundaries for yourself, because ultimately you want to have the most nurturing, loving, caring home, and you need it to be cohesive together. So you don't want to say that, oh, I think I can handle all this, I can handle it. But if you know deep down inside this is a behavior, or there's a behavior that you absolutely can't do, make sure that you voice that, because you want it to be a long-lasting relationship, and you want to have that bond, that very, very tight bond, to where they feel safe and comforted in your home, and then you also feel like you want to come back home, or you want to stay home, or you want to do activities together. So that's what I completely respect as well, because I felt very confident in saying that I personally know myself, that I can't handle high stress, so I can't have a lot of aggressive behaviors, because that triggers things inside of me that just doesn't work well. And so I stated exactly what I could and couldn't be productive with. So with that regard, they take into consideration all of your concerns, your strengths, your weaknesses and stuff to find the ultimate match for you. And maybe I got super duper double looper lucky, I don't know, but we're two peas in a pod, like I said, and it just was perfect. So
I think that transparency is huge, like on both sides. Even as a residential team, we're not going to lie to providers. It's really important for us to be transparent about the individual's needs for exactly that. So Shanti knows kind of what they're getting into. So yeah, I think that transparency from the host home provider to the residential team to the intake team is extremely important and makes for better matches that are long-term fits when everyone kind of knows what they're getting into.
Right. And the opportunity to be transparent really starts with the application. So we ask, what sort of medical needs do you feel like you can accommodate well in your home? And what sort of behavioral needs and mental health needs do you feel like you could be able to work well with? So it starts with the application. And then we also continue that with the host home inspection over Zoom, and then continue further with the several meet and greets leading up to the match. I saw someone had a question asking us to talk more about the trade name, Ingrid's iPhone. When does a trade name have to be used? So we won't ask you to get a trade name until we know for sure that a match has been established. So up until that point, you don't really need one. But once we know for sure we have the green light to move forward with a successful placement, we will ask that you have a trade name at that point. So like Brian mentioned earlier, all of our host home providers are contracted with Support Inc. And as such, we ask that you have a trade name and professional liability insurance. We do have suggestions for a company if you need that sort of information. We don't receive any kickbacks from them or anything like that. It's just an insurance company that we trust because we've worked with them for many years, and they're one of the few that understand what it means to be a host home provider and needing that professional liability insurance. Any other questions on the insurance or the trade name? Okay. Well, looks like we have just a few minutes left before we wrap up. So I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. If there's any other questions, and we can get those answered right now. Any other questions before we sign off of here? Okay.
This is Julia. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Kevin. My question will be, as how often? Okay, if maybe I should say this, but yeah, how often does the agency have referrals for placement? Because I understand you said sometimes it could take a little while before you can find the perfect match for a provider. But
Mhm.
like on a general level, like how often would you say that you have people that you play?
Yeah, so I know I keep repeating the same thing. It's case dependent. So some months we have a lot of referrals, and then some months it can seem kind of dry. And then it's also just going to depend on the area you live in. And quite frankly, how many other providers do we have in that area as well? So there are some areas we have that are fully staffed, and we might pause the host home provider ads in those areas occasionally while we wait on more referrals to come through. But typically, I know in your area in particular, sometimes the referrals come in and sometimes they don't. The for this year, unexpectedly, our most popular area has been Northern Colorado, and what we anticipated was Denver and Aurora to be the most popular areas just based on the populations of that area. But right now it seems like Northern Colorado has been a hot spot, but sometimes the west side of Denver will too. So I am sorry that that's not a clear answer.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think another important piece is that you've got an intake team looking for referrals for you and helping market you. There's a lot of other agencies that don't have a team dedicated to do this every single day to try to help get you a match. So just wanted to let you know that sometimes it's just one person at an agency that might have another job. And we'll kind of check referrals when they can. Kristen, Kathy, and I are on referrals within minutes of them coming in. So just so we can accept them, we can be first to say, yes, we'd love to meet this individual or family. So just wanted to also say that's an important component of Support Inc.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Well, with that, I think we'll stop recording the meeting.